Vikram Aggarwal of EnergySage just sold his company to Schneider Electric, and he has an entrepreneurial journey as a climate founder that I don't think gets highlighted or talked about enough. His journey started with him creating a blog that he completely bootstrapped to help people understand solar and what it meant to buy it and put it on their home. And his first funding dollars, like his real venture dollars, came from a DOE grant. And going on from there, rather than trying to compete with the big guns in the market on just traditional SEO and buying Google and Facebook ads, he found a unique way through channel partnerships that eventually helped him in 2016 explode in growth. This conversation is amazing, to say the least, and I'm sure you're going to love listening because I learned so much about what it takes to really grow and the different strategies that Vikram used in order to help EnergySage become the business it is today. Now, this conversation would not have been possible had it not been for the Clean Tech Open. Thank you so much to Beth Zonis of the Northeast Division for helping facilitate this conversation. As a quick shout out, they do have their accelerator applications closing on April 17th. So at the time of this coming out, you may have only mere hours or days left. I definitely urge you to check it out. Clean Tech Open was transformational in Vikram's journey, as well as plenty of other startups. So at least do us a favor and hop on over to Clean Tech Open and check it out, especially if you are a climate founder. But without further ado, I hope you enjoy this conversation with Vikram of EnergySage. Vikram, this is going to be one of the most exciting shows that I think we're probably going to do this entire year. It's going to be hard to beat learning about EnergySage, especially after the Schneider Electric acquisition. I think we're going to learn a lot about the growth story and the journey that you've been on, so I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. But for everyone who may not have heard of EnergySage or been involved in the solar buying process, I would love for you to just give a quick introduction about yourself and a little bit about EnergySage.
Great. First of all, thank you for having me on your podcast. I think it's great to be here. Energy Sage. So first of all, I'm Vikram Aggarwal. I'm the founder and CEO of Energy Sage. I started Energy Sage almost a little over a decade ago after spending about 15 years at Fidelity Investments, another Boston mainstay, if you would. Uh, so, Started Energy Sage, and let me describe Energy Sage. And it was, of course, we pivoted a bit, so we can get into that story in a few minutes. So, Energy Sage for all of you, it's a very easy platform, a way for homeowners, and for that matter, even business owners, to comparison shop for solar energy systems. So let's say, Swarnav, if you were interested in putting solar panels on your property, you shop through us, you sign up on our platform. Literally takes you 2 minutes to create an account, tell us where you're located, how much energy you consume, and any preferences you might have. And based on that information, you end up getting quotes from anywhere from 3 to 6 solar companies. These are all highly qualified, experienced solar companies who serve your zip code, if you would. These quotes all are delivered to you online. We standardize all these quotes and show it to you in a matrix-like format. So you can very easily and quickly compare your options, evaluate the price that is being offered, evaluate the quality of the equipment, quality of financing, quality of the contractor, very, very easily and quickly on the platform. And if you need any help, we have a call center, we have energy advisors who are very happy to answer any questions, help you make a decision. The whole process from a consumer perspective is very empowering. It's very transparent. So it really helps you make a good decision. And because of the competitive nature of a marketplace, you end up paying about 20% less than what you would otherwise pay. So it is a very simple, but a very empowering platform for consumers.
So it's a decade long journey of trying to address that challenge in the solar market. Like anyone who's actively gone through that home buying process or solar buying process for their home naturally knows that receiving bids is a big challenge. But before we get to the later years of where EnergySage was, now that it's part of Schneider Electric, I would love to kind of start it from the early days and understand when you identified this problem, how you found it, because a decade ago we could still say that solar was very emerging in those 2012 eras. That was the time when solar really started to pick up. So I'd love to learn more about that transition when you were working at Fidelity, when you identified this problem, and what were those early days like of identifying the problem, and what got you started in
Sure.
Energy Sage?
Sure. So I'll try to keep that journey a little bit shorter. As you can imagine, it's been a long journey. So my solar journey started sometime in the late 2005 timeframe. So very,
Okay.
very long time ago. So I was involved at Fidelity I was working at Fidelity's private equity group. So we were making investments in a lot of different industries, and one in particular was home building. Fidelity at one point owned the largest lumberyard company in the country that provided construction material
Hmm.
and services to home builders and contractors only. So rather than Home Depot and Lowe's, which are for people like you and I to just walk in, these are lumber yards that provide services to home builders and contractors. So I was the lead analyst in consolidating the market. And while we were doing that, we were creating this big, big national platform. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the governor of California, announced the California Solar Initiative in late 2005 or early 2006. I forget the exact timeline. So, if you folks who may have memories going that far back, he announced that his target was to have 1 million California homes powered by
Okay.
rooftop solar over the next decade. So it was and you have to imagine, and during that time, solar panels costed $5 a watt. Today, they are
Yeah.
roughly 50 cents or lower. You can even buy them for 25 cents a watt. So very, very different time frame. So he was a definitely a visionary. So that was the start of my journey. Some of the builders that we were supporting, they started testing putting solar panels on new homes and found that homes that had solar panels were selling faster than homes that were not powered by solar. So at that point, they came to us, to Fidelity's lumberyard company, and said, "Hey, because you provide us with the rest of the home, could you also start providing solar panels and maybe even just install it for us?" So that was, long story short, my entry into the solar industry. And
The
by
solar
extension,
world.
talking to the builders at that point, they were very interested in building more energy efficient homes using better wall material and better windows, etc. And then power those homes with not only solar, but other high efficiency energy devices. So next couple of years, I
Got
spent learning about this industry and looking at investing in this industry for Fidelity.
So really, the journey started back in
2005, yeah.
2005 for you. So I guess fast forwarding through all that learning, working at Fidelity, learning about building energy efficiency, and I guess new construction methodologies that were coming out around that time. As you approached 2012, what was the thing that made it click in your head that suddenly made you go, hey, this is an opportunity that someone needs to build a solution for?
Yeah, so actually, the my energy save journey started in 2009. So
Oh,
this is
okay.
post housing market crash, as
Yeah.
again some people may remember. In 2008, we had a major recession, and the whole because of housing market, the Wall Street crash happened. So post that, I decided, Obama got elected, there were two things that happened. One was George Bush passed the TARP Act, which extended the
Okay.
investment tax credit to residential properties. So for putting solar
Got
panels, you would get 30% investment tax credit.
got it.
So that dramatically improved the economics of solar. Second, the prices that were at $5 a watt for solar panels came down pretty dramatically to, I forget the exact numbers, but maybe closer to $2 a watt.
Got it.
And then, so the economics of solar started really making sense. And by the end of 2008, I realized that solar is actually a great financial decision. So, coming from Fidelity, having developed financial products, the light bulb moment was realizing that every household, as part of their portfolio, should invest in a solar energy system because it will
Right.
improve the returns of their portfolio. So rather than just investing in the stock market or bond markets or annuities, solar actually delivers better financial returns, tax free, and
Really?
guaranteed for the next 20 to 30 years, the life of a solar energy system. So at that point, I thought I've never seen a better financial product in my life. We got to, this is the right, we got to do something about this. People really need to know about this. So in 2009,
So you basically realized back when it was $2 a watt that solar could effectively deliver better, safer
and the
returns
market
than
can,
the market
exactly. And
can
just
in many
having gone through the
cases.
2001 market crash and then 2007, 2008 market crash, it's like, man, this is actually a really good financial product. Let me go and tell the world. And with the Obama's election and talking about green energy and green jobs, it's like this is a great time to be an entrepreneur, right? So started building the first version of EnergySage, which was essentially an educational platform for consumers,
Right.
to help consumers understand what are the different technology options. And again, I'm very much currently talking about solar photovoltaics, but back then, as I mentioned, my purview was quite broad. So we started talking to consumers about solar photovoltaics, solar thermal, geothermal systems, small wind turbines, combined heat and power systems, biomass systems. So the first version of Energy Sage was a website dedicated to educating the consumers about all these different technologies, help them understand and help them get interested in these technologies, and then have a
Mm.
very basic lead gen model. We had a directory of providers that consumers could connect with and get their process started. So build that, started building that, launched the first version in 2010, February of 2010, and ran that for the next 18 months or so, helping
Okay.
educate consumers. But then by the end of 2011, kind of realized that we were actually solving the wrong problem. Um, so what was happening was that people would get interested in these technologies and they would get quotes from different contractors, and they would send me the quotes. They would say, Vikram, I cannot make any sense of these. They're talking, these contractors are all telling me that they have the best offer, everything else is crap, and I should go with them. And I cannot make sense of these quotes. They're all mumbo
Uh,
jumbo and unstandardized or whatever. So I would basically take all the quotes and create a report for them. I would basically standardize. I would not go into a lot of detail, but I would standardize
mm.
all the quotes and give them a report. And without fail, everybody said, "This is great. You know, this is what you should be doing." And I actually helped initially the Sierra Club, as we all know, one of the very big nonprofits in the country, select a solar provider for their
Really?
members, and ran this analysis for them. So we
Huh.
basically comparison shopped a whole bunch of companies in the solar industry. They were offering their members in California, they were recommending a solar installer. So they ended up choosing Sungevity back then. So anyway, long story short, everybody just kept coming back and saying, "Hey, the standardized report is what is the most value here."
Right.
So that is where in early 2012, the again another light bulb moment happened. So okay, how the hell do we now operationalize this standardized reporting? So that is when the idea of a reverse auction marketplace came about. And it just happens, right? You're just sitting there, you're trying to figure out how to solve this problem, and literally, it just it's like, hey, this is a reverse auction process, right? So at that point,
Okay.
we applied for a Department of Energy, had a program uh, called the Sunshot Initiative, and they were soliciting ideas for reducing customer acquisition costs. So we pitched them this idea of building a reverse auction marketplace and received that grant in the summer of 2012. And that is kind of the official kickoff of EnergySage, because prior to that, I was self-funded. Fortunately, I had the resources to self-fund, bootstrap the company. I had a team of folks who were helping me part-time, but I did not really have a full-time team. So that grant from the U.S. Department of Energy really allowed us to make this into a real kickoff, and started building a team full time and start building this marketplace.
Okay.
And so this was June, call it May or something. Again, the time again, it's been a long time, right? 10 years. So right at the same time, uh, as you are familiar with, the Clean Tech Open initiative in Boston, in actually, I should not say Boston, in the northeast of the country. Um, I knew those folks, and I had applied the year before in 2011. Did not participate, but then in 2012, actually, one of the leaders of Clean Tech Open encouraged me to apply for the Clean Tech Open. Um, and my response was, "Hey, I thought you all were only interested in hardware solutions, and maybe not interested in software solutions." They're like, "No, no, no. Please do apply. This is great. What you're doing is very interesting." So I actually applied, kind of reluctantly, if you would, and one of the better decisions of my life. so,
So
so
that's fascinating. So let's recap real quick. It seems like you did what today has become very buzzwordy of like, oh, build a community first, build an audience, then find out what challenges that audience is facing, then build a solution for it. But really what you did is it almost started off like you started an educational blog or course platform online, like an early version of a blog. And you guys still do a lot of that, but we'll get there. We'll get to that exciting part of how you guys grew and scale in a bit. But it seems like you started there, and because you were talking with your audience so much, you identified that, hey, there's this innate challenge in being able to select a solar provider. Just because the solar sales process is a very complex one. Not not because of the fault of the consumer, but sales reps don't make it very
they don't
easy
make it
in that
easy.
space. Today, it feels like. But you identified that opportunity to do
Hmm.
these comparisons, and because of that, and because you had already technically piloted this service and seen that people liked it, and naturally that means you could help more solar installers potentially even adopt or land more customers by being ethical and providing a fair price and bidding on these projects. You suddenly opened up an opportunity to build the energy sage we know today. It was at that point when you started exploring accelerator programs, grants. The DOE grant was obviously the financial capital, and I don't think people value
Yep.
grant funding enough. Everyone thinks venture capital is the only way to
Hmm.
go, but I love that
Hmm.
your story, and your journey started with a DOE grant and then going to an
Yeah.
accelerator organization like the Clean Tech Open to continue to establish and build this out.
Exactly.
Now, accelerators tend to always be the inception for a lot of these, kind of high growth companies. I'm curious
Yeah.
what your journey was like. Like, what was that first year to two? Because it always feels like the startup's journey in the first 2 years is the time when everything just goes chaotic. So I'm really curious what that journey was like in during the Clean Tech Open, because that's a 1 year kind of involvement process, and some say it's for life as well. And that grant funding also being there. What was that journey like in the first 2 years of Energy Sage's, I guess, real formation?
Yeah, so I think I there are too many battle scars to to relive. Long story short, I think getting a startup going is very difficult. It is a you need a lot of help. No matter how smart you are as an entrepreneur, no matter how great of a team you have, you need a lot of help. And that is where I'm very glad that we were part of the Boston startup ecosystem, part of the Clean Tech Open ecosystem, because there is so much help that you need, so much support that you need, both emotional and economic. Right? You're fighting this battle that not a lot of people really understand what goes through to starting a business, right? So you want to hang out with fellow entrepreneurs because we are all fighting the same journey, and you can sometimes you think you feel stupid, tell you the truth, right? You feel like I must be making this mistake, it must be me. And then you're talking to the other entrepreneurs and they're like, no, we are all going through the same thing, it's not stupid. And I can tell you it's very easy to give up if you don't have that kind of a support system, right? So being part of, for example, the Cleantech Open, the Boston ecosystem, Mass CEC, the another I would like to give a shout out to another great Massachusetts institution. They're all helping you get the right resources. You need to hire, you need customers, you need partners, you need fellow entrepreneurs, you need mentors. You just need so much help, and all these people. You're, I'm still surprised how many people are willing to help you. They don't even know you, right? They don't even, you are a stranger to them. But because you're fighting a good fight, there are so many people who are willing to help you. And I can tell you, you cannot do without that.
So, like,
Uh,
what would be a great example of that? Because, like, I don't think that I don't
yeah.
think that point gets drilled in enough. Where, what's a great example of those early days challenges? Like, what's one that you just remember that's traumatized you to the point where you're just like, that's the one from the early days
Yeah,
that I
as I
like
said,
to
I can go
clown.
into hundreds of these. One let's see what one should I highlight. So, of course, when you're starting the journey, we did get some grant from the Department of Energy, but that was not sufficient. You needed even more money, right? Your startups always need more capital, more investment. So we were trying to put together this investment deck, the investment
Hmm.
presentation. And this is where the clean tech process came in very handy because they have a 3 month timeline. You got to, at the end of your program, you have to have a uh, presentation, an investment presentation.
Right.
And by the way, like before starting Energy Sage, I had a very, um, very much of a strong, broad experience in investments. As I mentioned, I was a private equity investor. I was a strategy consultant before that. I had business development experience, technology experience. So I was not coming in raw, right? I had 15 years of pretty strong experience with MBA and a CFA. But coming into when you're starting to pitch your own business, it's very different than doing it for the others or being on the other side of the table. So where I really got help was from mentors that were assigned to me, and there was a timeline. Hey, you got to put together a deck, uh, and they basically, hey, here's the outline. Here's a 12-page outline. This is what every investor is looking for. This is what you got to build, and then getting the mentors literally on a weekly basis to give them a draft. They spend hours looking at it, giving you feedback, so you are now iterating, and then going to a mock presentation with actual investors, presenting in front of them, getting live feedback, editing your presentation again, and then making the final presentation. Within 3 months, you had an excellent investor deck that, if it was left to me on my own, would be very hard to get to.
I
Right?
mean, you don't really have financials at that stage of a business that you
Yeah,
can base off of.
yeah,
So I imagine that contrast must have been a really interesting experience, because you had to
yeah.
reframe your entire mind. And then not only that, to you, I don't know about you, but I've done an investor pitch before in my life, and those early ones are ones that I wish I could take back. So I feel like doing those mock runs with investors that have your best
Yeah.
interests in mind, that's actually a really useful point. Is that associated to the accelerators you were part of?
That was Clean Tech Open.
Okay.
Without that, can you imagine going to a venture capitalist and saying, "Hey, can I practice in front of you?" You're like, "Yeah, right, buddy." So, and then you're meeting with other, again, the networking events that we have, and you're just talking to the right people. You're absorbing so much information, right? How to do this? I was a first-time entrepreneur, and as I said, entrepreneurs can make and do make hundreds and hundreds of mistakes. So just getting the right advice, just overhearing others talk about their experience, just being in the room is so valuable, right? So that was a great experience. And what we were trying to do was very disruptive. Even today, what EnergySage does is very disruptive, right? So if you think about people who have used any who have had a project, a home improvement project, try to find the right contractors, and those contractors to actually give you a quote that actually makes some sense is very difficult.
Absolutely.
So when we initially approached the solar installers and said, "Hey, we are building this reverse auction stuff," we did not use the word reverse auction. We said we are building this tool for consumers. Would you like to participate? 99 out of the 100 literally laughed us out of the door. They're like, "Yeah, right. What you're telling me is you're going to make my prices transparent and competitive with my competitors? No way. I'm not participating." Right? So this is where groups like Mass EC and Sierra Club of Massachusetts came in very helpful to help us get us in front of consumers, create the demand that we were then able to go to the installers and say, "Hey, the installers, look, we have dozens and dozens of consumers who are interested in solar. Would you like to pitch them? And we will make it very risk free for you. Try us out and see what we can do," right? And they liked it, right? It is because consumers love the experience, and because of that, the installers love that experience. So
Mm.
again, that very first few months, first couple of years was very difficult. And marketplaces are even, I won't even go into details about the challenge of building a marketplace that has to balance demand and supply at the zip code level. Solar is a very localized business, right? So again, your the stress levels are crazy. The industry doesn't want to participate. Getting customers at the right customer acquisition cost is extremely difficult in the solar industry. Trying to disrupt a market that was so early stage. Again, you have to go back solar industry 10 years ago, 9 years ago, very early stage industry, and you're trying to tell the industry you got to do things differently, and not just a little bit differently, but very differently. Um, so
I mean, how did you feel? Because like I feel so many founders have hit that wall, and that's where companies die. What was it like at that point in your journey? Because like you're trying to figure out all these things, and you have something which I think calls back to your early days that will lead to your real growth story, which we'll dig into next. But what did it feel like in that
yeah, it
stage?
is, as I said, the only thing that an entrepreneur has is perseverance, and the right team. Sorry, I should put the team. I think the team is the most critical. Having the right folks in the room who have the same mission and vision and supporting building the vision, and then be just go after it. We always talk about we are looking for people who are so mission driven, so ready to succeed that they know that they're going to face a lot of problems. The only commitment that we are looking from them is willingness to acknowledge there are going to be a ton of problems and the willingness to solve them one at a time, right? That's the only thing that startups can do. There is no startup that never had problem solving, exactly, and doing it with a smile, right? Because it can be very difficult. So you need a team that sticks with you, that understands that yes, it's not easy, and we will persevere.
Damn. Okay, so I think you're in this really interesting stage now. You've got an initial package, traction, meaning there's a problem here. Consumers love it. You already have traffic coming to your blog because you're basically an educational resource, even still today. And now you're in a position where you also have solar installers starting to get a little bit interested because of the support you're getting from an organization like Mass CC in this case. What I'm really interested in is you're stuck in this part between early success. You're in that crossing the chasm stage as now popularized. What was that key that really flipped the switch for you and allowed you to unlock and hit the stride that EnergySage used to become today, where it's basically a top ranked on Google search for almost everything, in my opinion, because every time I went down the solar buying experience, both in California and here in New York as well, everything I search, I see an EnergySage link pop up. So you guys have become quite ubiquitous, at least in the States, from my personal experience. So I'd love to kind of understand, what was that click that really took you guys to the next level?
Yeah, I think there were maybe two different strategies that we used that made us successful. So before I get to those two, as I mentioned, ecosystem is very critical. You're talking to other entrepreneurs. One of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs, and especially people in the solar industry, even early on, told me that the biggest mistake that they made was spending money on Google
Oh,
AdWords.
yeah.
That a lot of companies went bankrupt, solar companies went bankrupt because they thought they can advertise their way out of growth, that they can just spend money and advertise. So, as a strategy person, what I always realize is you fight the war that you can fight. You never fight the war that your competitors are fighting. So, you have to basically figure out what is the right go to market strategy for you and not try to compete with the likes of Solar City back in the day. Solar City, Sunrun, they were spending gazillions of dollars on marketing. So we were like, we don't have that kind of money, and the economics just doesn't work for us. So we cannot fight that battle. So we realized that. So now
Yeah.
let me go back to what really clicked for us. So starting in 2010, I started writing a lot about the buying experience, about solar photovoltaic, solar thermal, geothermal, you name it. So my coming out of Fidelity Investments, Fidelity was very, very focused on consumer education. And I think that just came into my DNA, that let's educate, because without education, there is no consumer confidence. And without consumer confidence, consumers don't buy anything. We only buy things that we feel comfortable, and knowledge gives us comfort. So from day one, I started writing a lot of everything that I was learning on the ground. I would turn around and start writing about it. Simple, right? And mostly it was about, hey, let's have the right information for consumers. It really was not producing any kind of traffic for us because, as you know, search engine optimization and organic traffic is very, very difficult. There are 150 or 200 million websites out there, right? So without fail, we were writing content year after year, so that was one, but it was not producing any results for the first several years. So the next thing that we did was we basically said, what we are doing, we need to reach consumers. How do we reach consumers? Let's find organizations that would help us reach consumers. So whether it is nonprofits like the Sierra Club or the World Wildlife Fund or your local town committees, right? In Massachusetts, we had the Green Communities Act, and we had a number of towns that were promoting renewables and sustainability. There were large businesses in our neighborhood. As you know, there's a company called Staples, very large organization. There are utilities like National Grid and EverSource. There are a number of other organizations. So the first thing that we did was we tried to identify these organizations and just started telling them our story and the education that we are providing. And that really helped us. This strategy, I guess, is called affiliate and channel partnership strategy. And that is where we zoned in. the first 2 3 years of our life. And that's what really helped us, including Mass CEC in Massachusetts, NYSERDA in New York, Connecticut Green Bank in Connecticut. Rhode Island had a very similar state institution. So we leverage a lot of the state institutions, nonprofits, employers, etc. Staples, actually, I was surprised early on, recommended us and put us on their website. It's the seventh most trafficked website in the country. Yeah, they basically started recommending us to their both their employees and even their small business customers. So that was very, very helpful strategy, and that was all because of the ecosystem, right? The Boston startup ecosystem. You were able to get connections, make connections, um, and wanted to help us. And then, after almost 6 years of writing a lot of content, in 2016 was kind of our breakout moment where our content just broke out. And literally, if you see our traffic chart from Google search, for example, just it's a fighter fighter jet
Exponentially.
exponential. It just took off, and story has not stopped right from then. So one is, again, you have to persevere. There were a lot of people who, even internally, we had debates. Hey, should we spend this much effort in writing content because it's not producing anything? For 5 years, it's not doing anything, right? So maybe we should spend more money on advertising. Maybe we should look at other sources, maybe channel partnerships. Yes, it's all of the above. You got to persevere. You got to stick to a plan, and make it happen.
So that's actually really interesting. This channel partner approach. Like instead of prioritizing SEO, which companies like Zapier built their entire businesses off of SEO, but Amazon as well does that, and like Google and Facebook ads, the running joke is you raise ventures so that you can give it back to Google and Facebook. But but what you did is identified a different angle to approach this. And this is actually talking and landing big entities that have credibility to be promoting and supporting what you're doing in terms of educating the masses. I imagine that's what
Mhm.
really stuck with them and got them to go, what I'm happy to drive people to EnergySage because it's something I would like to
Mhm.
align my brand with, and it aligns with my values as well.
Mhm.
And the information is obviously rock solid, and of course this marketplace angle is a useful tool for anyone who decides to actually utilize it. I imagine that's what really made it stick when you had these early partnership kind of conversations.
That was very important. And the second thing that we did was we stayed true to our number one value.
Hmm.
So Energy Sage, our number one value is consumer first. And for business school students, I would like to differentiate. We are a two-sided marketplace. There's buyers that
Right.
are consumers, and then there are sellers who are actually our customers. They are the ones who pay us. Business schools will teach you you should always provide, you should always support your customer. We decided, no, we're not going to do that. We will be in favor of the consumer first. So if there is ever a trade-off that is, or a decision that we have to take, that either it's for the customer, the sellers, or the consumers, we will always favor the consumer. We will always look at what is the right thing to do with the consumer. So that has helped us create this trusted advisor relationship with our consumers, people who leverage us. Even though the industry gets mad at us at times that we are too consumer centric, but that is
It's a
our,
value.
it's a value. So you have to choose your values very, very carefully. That what are you looking to do? We had number of instances when large companies came to us and said they'll pay us 3 times more if we just tilted the balance in their favor on the marketplace. We did not do it. There were a couple other competitors who were trying to replicate what we do. They did it, and because of that, no channel partner was recommending them because they had the trust in Energy Sage that Energy Sage will always do right by their audience, right? Whether it's their employees or customers or members or residents, we will always do right by their audience. And that has made us who we are.
I think that's actually a really important important because you see this a lot with marketplaces or platforms in general where the balance between revenue and a user experience, and there's that short-sightedness of, hey, that's an extra $1 million in cash for us. It sounds amazing, but really the opportunity cost that people don't seem to
Exactly.
see is the 10
Exactly.
million that you may make if you just helped continue to support the people who even helped you get to that
Yeah.
stage.
And not only that, I think your team feels good, right? We are not mercenaries. We are a mission driven. If you talk to our team members, they all, I think, appreciate that we do the right thing, right? That is what motivates us. That is what lets us go through difficult times and say, hey, but guess what? We are doing the right thing. We feel good about ourselves and what we do, right? So it is a total package, and I love it that there is that sense of fairness that that
And you've been able to maintain that for
yeah.
10 years. And now, obviously, you're carrying those values on. I just find that inspiring in and of itself because you just see that being lost even in companies that are going on to be billions of dollars in value, publicly traded, whatever it might be. Yeah, holding on to those values is the right thing. I just love that. It's something you've been able to keep in it.
Yeah.
It gives it makes me feel warm to not and I don't even work there. But I guess then the final part of your journey is that 2016 everything just popped to today where now you're joining
Yes.
Schneider and building, EnergySage into even a bigger platform potentially. So I'd love to learn, what were those final years of hypergrowth like? How did you hang on to everything that's going on
Yeah.
now that traffic is skyrocketing, people buying, marketplace sellers, everything is just happening. What you imagined year one would be, as every entrepreneur does. And what was that transition like now? What's the vision for the future now
Yeah.
that you're joining Schneider Electric?
Yes.
So that's
Yeah.
that's my
So I
two-part
think to
question.
your first part question is there was never a moment that we felt safe and comfortable, right? There was so much to do. Keep growing this marketplace, keep doing things better, serve our consumers better, serve our customers better, serve our channel partners better, right? So that has always continued. I think what I'm very excited now is the next phase of Energy Sage. So we were funded by angel groups out of Boston. Launchpad Venture Group was our lead investor. Very, very thankful for them. Mass EC was our single largest investor. So again, cannot thank Launchpad or Mass EC more than what they've done for us. So really, really appreciate that support that we got. So we were looking, but those are angel investments, right? So we never had a huge war chest to invest. So we always had to be very fundamentally strong company. We had really high gross margins. We had excellent unit economics. So we really built a very solid company. So last year we basically started looking for our Series B funding round with a goal to now broaden Energy Sage out of just residential rooftop solar to basically becoming the energy platform for the United States, I guess. Let's start with that. So that was a electrification platform. So not only you're looking at rooftop solar or even community solar, battery and backup solutions, to heat pumps, to EVs and EV charging, sensors and other connected home devices. And as we all know, we are all moving towards a connected grid, right? VPP services and how your home actually talks to the grid and vice versa. So that is our vision to now let's build Energy Sage into that platform that consumers can use for all things energy. So that was our journey last year. We started talking to a lot of investors, um, and we ran into Schneider, which we have worked off and on as a partner over the years, and they really liked our growth story, our positioning, and decided to make a substantial investment, take a majority stake in the company. And now we are looking to build this platform and hopefully someday take the platform global. So that's the
Damn.
exciting part.
Okay, well, I mean, I think if that's not inspiring, I don't know what is. I mean, to tell you and recap the entire story that we just kind of went over, it started off like an educational blog. Eventually showed you that there's this reverse marketplace and this quote comparison component, which then led you to joining accelerators to find community, learn how to just be an entrepreneur, and eventually you identified this strategy of, hey, let's go form partnerships with some of the biggest entities, like even Staples. And then suddenly all that hard work of the blog content that you were putting out suddenly pops in 2016, and then the rocket ships off to the races. And now, given the climate and the timing, electrification is now the big topic. It's not just solar, which leads you to have almost, I imagine, a really interesting partnership forming with Schneider Electric to enable that future. Because obviously now it's not buying solar, it's buying an electric vehicle that may have the V to G capability. Is that important to you, or do you want energy storage by yourself, or do you want a Tesla solar roof and all these different technologies, heat pumps, and it's just overwhelming for most.
It is overwhelming,
consumers.
Exactly.
So
and that's where
I find that beautiful.
Yeah, and we are really well positioned to be that trusted advisor for the consumer, helping them make the right decision. These are very big investments. These are not small investments. We're not talking hundreds of dollars. We're talking thousands of dollars. And they all have to talk to each other, right? You just cannot have solar and batteries in a vacuum. Now, how is that going to work with your kitchen appliances? How you're using energy, and when are you using energy? And we know that as more electric vehicles are adopted by consumers, the demand for electricity is going to skyrocket, and how we will balance the grid. Anyway, that is the future, and we want to be part of that future in helping make consumers the right decision.
Well, Vikram, I think that's where I think we should leave this episode, because I think there's a lot for people to chew on and learn from on that front. I guess the last thing I want to ask you is there anything you would like to plug for EnergySage or yourself? You have the floor. Hiring, anything of that nature. The floor.
I think you just hit it. We are growing. We are looking for smart, motivated folks. Please come and join us. There are a lot of positions that we are currently actively recruiting for, but there are even more positions that we have in the pipeline. So please do reach out, join us. It's a very exciting time.
Awesome, Vikram.
Thank you, Swarnav.
Thanks so much for coming on. Whew. Well, that was a conversation and a half. I learned a lot, and I hope you did as well, especially all those growth strategies around how he used channel partners and his values of really sticking to supporting the consumer. Those were two that really stuck out to me. And I'd love to hear what stuck out to you by either commenting on the YouTube video and leaving a review potentially on Apple Podcasts. And just make sure you follow and do all the things if you would like to show your support. Now, if you want more content like this, including educational content right from climate founders themselves, you definitely want to check out the Impact newsletter. You can find that entirely for free at readtheimpact.com. You're going to see ton more content just like this coming out. And naturally, follow the podcast, because we're having really interesting conversations coming up in our queue. But I want to give one final shout out to the Clean Tech Open, especially the Northeast division headed up by Beth Sonis, and her help in helping facilitate this conversation. And as a thank you, I want to urge you, or if you know a climate founder, if you're not one yourself, to recommend them to check out the April 17th deadline for the Clean Tech Open Accelerator Program. So, once again, that's April 17th, and definitely go check it out because, as you could see and tell, it was transformational in Vikram's journey. And who knows, maybe the next big climate company is listening to this right now and they'll be applying on April 17th. And we'll have them on the show, The Green Room, in a future episode.